Hello, welcome back to another podcast episode. This is A Moment in Time with Albert and Alex.
That is the name
Today,
of the podcast, and that is the people who are here.
exactly. Today, we are going to be talking about something that's been going on recently. It was last week, actually, a hearing specifically with a bunch of social media CEOs. We had Facebook, we had TikTok, we had X, Snapchat, and
No one
Discord.
calls it X.
Yeah, everyone except YouTube.
Yeah, but YouTube got their own stuff going on with the government right now.
They do.
So
They do.
I mean, and I
Um,
was also surprised. No Reddit, but
yeah,
then I thought about it, I feel like as Reddit, this hearing was mostly about endangering children on the platform. I guess when I was thinking about it, I guess Reddit leans older. I feel like most people, young people, don't use Reddit. I feel like it definitely swings older in terms of social media. I would say. Like initially when I saw that lineup, I was like, interesting. There's no Reddit. But then I thought of it. I was like, is like a 13-year-old using Reddit?
hmm
What are they looking up on Reddit?
that
I
does
don't
make
know.
sense. I mean, by skewing upward, do you mean like Gen Z millennials, or do you mean like is that who you're
Well,
talking about
well,
demographic wise?
the hearing was mostly about like like teenagers, like young teenagers, like 13, 14, 15.
Right.
I feel like Reddit like swings like more people like in their like late teens to 20s. I feel like.
hmm
I mean, obviously you have like some communities that claim to like like r/teenagers or whatever. But I
Yeah.
feel like generally most of the time you go on Reddit and you see like a random thread and this guy was like, "Yeah, I'm like 50," and I'm like, "What are you doing to Reddit?" I thought only people didn't use like social media besides like Facebook. But
Right.
I guess Reddit has also swings older, I guess. On
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I don't use Reddit very often. Typically, if I'm using Reddit, it's like I'm actually not using Reddit. I'm listening to "Am I the Asshole" stories on YouTube instead of like what or reading them on Reddit. I
yeah,
prefer
I don't use
hearing
it
them.
too much anymore ever since like they had that whole controversy with them. I don't even remember what the controversy was, but it was something with like the moderators. They're trying to like
Oh
get a
yeah.
lot of moderators. I don't remember. It was so prevalent in my mind when it happened, but now thinking back on it, I don't even remember what it was about.
So I know
So
there was a change that made it such that like third parties that
yes,
re
that's what
like
it was.
that show like Reddit's platform like in a different format or
Yes,
whatever.
that's what it
It
was.
was no
It was
longer
it was that
viable.
they're charging exuberant amounts for like third-party apps to use their API when it was like normally
Yes.
free or whatever.
Yep.
That's what it was. Yeah, I
Yeah. Yeah.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, then like there was the whole controversy, and then like all the subreddits like shut down in like protests.
Mm-hmm.
Like even now, like that was like a year ago, well, maybe it wasn't a year ago, like 6 months ago, whatever it was. But like a lot of subreddits I used are still not like opened back up. Like my feed is just like dead.
Mm-hmm.
So like I just kind of stopped using it. But I guess that would. So I guess at least in terms of me, that boycott worked. But anyway, that
Yeah.
was off topic. I was.
Anyway, yeah. So I guess we can go over what the main overarching idea of this hearing was about, and then kind of move into some of the specific points that they were talking about. So I
Yep.
guess to start there, this whole hearing process was meant to protect children or finding ways that we need to protect children on social media platforms, specifically because there seems to be a lot of things like bullying, inappropriate content, and things that are ultimately leading people to also trigger warning because depending on whether or not you actually want to hear about this stuff, um, it can be very upsetting for people who have uh, issues with some of these topics. So if you're not really comfortable hearing about this, I would step away, step off this episode now. But that being said, this also relates to things like suicide, self harm, stuff like that. So
Drug addiction stuff.
yeah, drug addiction, things like that. So a lot of the touch points are basically we need to create protections, especially for people that are children and even like teenagers, people younger than that, but all the way up to like 18-year-olds. Maybe even young adults is probably also,
I they specifically like said like 13 and above
yeah,
because there was there's already the Child Protective Act that you can't have people over 13 on your platform.
right.
So like I guess the government just because like they always said chill. I noticed that when I was watching hearing that, so they always said like 13 and up or like
Yeah,
teenagers. They never said like children, even though we all know for a fact there's definitely people under 13
yeah,
using these platforms daily. But
Yeah. And I will say, like, some of the negative implications, the reason why I was saying it that way, they don't just affect like kids, they also affect people even our age and
oh
older,
no, 100%.
because a lot of us kind of grew up with the rise of social media as well. So I'm sure like a lot of this stuff has also impacted people like our age, or maybe even a
Mm,
couple years older than us. So I did want to mention that. But the big thing here is that while all of these social media platforms have methods to try and prevent these inappropriate problems arising, whether that be sexual content or whether that means like preventing children from getting access to illicit or illegal substances, or even things like bullying or things that'll lead to some of the self harm and stuff like that. Um, the, it's not enough, and I guess even if you just go on some of these platforms, it's not very difficult to find probably some of these things that they're talking about. I will say
yeah,
like the trafficking related stuff that was a bit surprising with some of the stuff that they mentioned there. So even that is still apparently a topic of issue here. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of very like not or very like surprising slash um, inappropriate things that are happening on social media still, even with things like content moderation and all of these people that supposedly work to try and remove this type of
yeah.
content.
The platforms are just so big, they can't feasibly get to every single post. And like it's like not that I'm defending them, like, these big tech corporations or anything, but like it was like um so I remember one of the senators asked, like, what do you get, like, it's proven that this is Mark Zuckerberg, that like Facebook and Instagram are actively harming children or whatever. And he's like, but if you look at the study, it's 15 out of 16
Mhm.
categories. They said they find it to be an improvement. But like the government doesn't care that it's 15 out of 16 categories. They're just
Yeah.
concerned because at least as long as there's one category where they're failing, they're basically failing 100. They're still failing.
Yeah.
The government's not happy with a 98% approval rate. They want a 100% like success rate because
Yeah.
if every like 1 in 1,000 kid is like harming themselves because of social media, that's 1 in 1,000 too many. So
Yeah, I did also see that. I mean, it was very clear that the senators, or what was it, senators? I think so, right? Yeah.
yeah, they
Um,
said
yeah, senators that they had a very clear opinion and they were very ready to cut off and just keep
yeah.
speaking, which kind of, in some ways, it made me feel like they weren't really there to talk to the people that they forced to be there,
No,
slash,
it's all an act.
yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think it was an act. I think part of it is that
Maybe
they might
act's not the
just,
right word, but it's
they're,
they do this like same type of hearing like literally every year
yeah,
without ever like okay, it's not an act, it's political theater.
yeah,
That's what the phrase I was looking for. It's political theater. They do this and say we're gonna fix it and we're gonna do something, and then they don't do anything, and 12 months later they just do this hearing again like they have for like the past 10 years.
right.
They'll just do this hearing again and not make any type of change on it. It's just to make them look better,
It seemed
basically.
very
Just
much like they just wanted to like yell at them and then to
yeah.
say that you either will sign whatever we want you to do, regardless of what that is, or you're against us. And so it kind of just seemed like they were talking for their platforms and talking for like their specific audiences to make them feel like their senator or their like elected representatives are
Yeah, exactly.
yelling the things that they want them to yell without actually doing anything. So
Yeah.
I think that if this actually leads to some legislation, I think there's still going to be a lot of pushback just because it seemed very much like they were not willing to even let the CEOs respond because they cut them
Mm.
off every other time. It was like, oh, I ask you this question, or I spend 5 minutes talking. Now I'm going to talk to the next
Well,
person.
a lot of times when they did it too, to be fair, is like they would ask a simple yes no question, and the CEOs want to give their scripted like
Right.
3 sentence answer when they just want a yes or no. But it's the complete game of cat and mouse because the senators want them to just say it bluntly,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't want to say it bluntly because it's gonna make them implicit to whatever they're accusing them of. If they just say yes or no, so they're like, well, I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would say like no,
Yeah.
I just want a yes or no,
Yeah.
and then, so
Yeah.
like nothing. It's just people butting heads together.
Yeah.
Not like
And
much is gonna get done with that.
Yeah, just to clarify too, like I do think that the point of, oh, we need like further regulation or protections for kids that are being exposed to social media, I fundamentally agree with that. I
No,
don't
I agree with that too.
I don't know what the correct answers are as to what that looks like. I don't know if anyone really does, but I mean, things like this hopefully will at some point lead to an actual change that
Yeah,
helps
it,
people.
it's a tough situation because it's like how much restriction is then too much restriction, and then people are gonna accuse the government of just using it to collect data on them instead of big tech collecting data on them. Because it's like the government's man, it's like, oh, you're collecting all this data on people and selling it for profit. Then
Right.
meanwhile, the government puts in a bunch of restrictions, and they'll be like, oh, we're in charge of the data now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like whatever. So it's like there's like some type of gray area in the middle that I'm not sure where it is, but it's how does the government regulate them without overreaching? I
Yeah.
think is the main issue.
I do think, like, in my mind, I'm like, well, the easiest thing to do would be, at least conceptually, would be to say, okay, you want to create a social media account, use your ID to do it. There are problems with that though,
There are
because
a lot of problems with that.
the biggest one is privacy concerns, right? Especially for
Yep.
things like whistleblowers and stuff like that. So I totally understand that there's problems with that. However, there should be I think it's better to have that for kids than to not have it, I guess. That is like the one caveat where I'm like, okay, is this stuff going to be held against you? So my thought process is maybe something like using a tokenization process where you don't actually store who the person is, but you just like are able to, at like the application layer, save the information of like how old they are and have the proof.
It's trick. It's tricky because how do you get that information? Like, because the easy way to do it is just be like, oh, verify their age
Right.
instead of just making them type in, a date, and then you're like, what every kid does, you scroll back to like 1900, and you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like
Exactly.
110 years old. And it's like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you're 110, whatever. But at the same time, it's like you won't. A lot of times, a lot of people don't want to be like, yeah, just put in your ID because, like you said, all the privacy concerns and everything
Yeah.
associated with just giving these random companies all your information off your ID card.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not something a lot of people want to do. So it's like a weird situation where it's like, oh, you want to use age verification, but there's not really a way of doing that without making it feel like a massive violation of a user's privacy.
Yeah. And then once you get a leak of some kind, I mean, regardless, right now, if you get a leak, a data leak or whatever of some kind, it's like so much information's already being sold about you. But on the other hand, like if the government decided to utilize that information to then tie it directly back to you, I don't feel super comfortable with that. But
Yeah.
I think the big thing is like, well, are you doing stuff on the internet that you wouldn't want to be tied for you? Really? Like that's, I guess the big question is, what could you possibly be doing? And the answer is, I mean, it depends on where you live. It depends on what type of environment your community is, things like that. Like there could be very real repercussions for what you would classify as probably just freedom of speech, having your own opinions, stuff like that. Uh,
Oh,
but I think personally, like if you're going to talk about things like uh, NSFW content and like things that are like actually like not appropriate for children, I think that in order to access that kind of content, it might just be worth having some type of verification process so that if you don't want that, then you don't have to verify. But if you want that stuff to be visible, maybe that would be like a bit of a middle ground where if you're gonna watch or read or view smut of some kind, well then you're gonna have to do it. Um,
and a lot of things too, in like the grand scheme is like that doesn't really solve anything either.
yeah.
To be fair, because it's like a lot of these like on the state level, a lot of states have been doing that for like like NSFW content they've been making, so you have to like register with an ID or whatever, and then
Hmm.
all these websites are just like, we're just not going to provide service to your state
Right.
instead of doing that because we think it's ridiculous violation of people's privacy to do that.
Right.
And then basically then what people then they just get a VPN and they just connect to some other state and get around it. So like
Yeah.
I mean even if it became a federal thing, what's stopping people from then just like making a VPN connecting to Canada
Yeah.
and just
You're
circumventing all
totally
that?
right. Yeah.
It's not like it's not even really like it's not even really like a solution because VPNs are so readily available nowadays
Yeah.
anyway. So it's not like it's gonna prevent people. It's not like people have to go crazy out of their way to get a VPN or whatever.
Yeah, and then
So
there's still the problem of like these platforms are worldwide too. So, like, if you wanted to make it a worldwide policy, for example, right, there could be parts of the world where it's hard to get a government identification that's still
Yeah.
valid and stuff like that. So, there are other issues that emerge with that as well. So, I totally understand that. But I, I think the biggest thing to me is like, I'd say, you know what? Create verification for email. Force email companies to do age verification, and then you could create your accounts with a verified email that states that you are in fact the age that you want to do, and then that's like one step removed, and then it would just be tracking the email as usual, right? Because your email,
Mm.
you can look up any email, I think, right now and figure out what accounts are associated with it. I don't think it's difficult to find that information.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, well, maybe if you look at email companies and say, okay, these companies that generate emails are verifiable, and you have specified that, like, the government specifies like a set of standards for what those organizations have to do, and then on top of that, um, you tell social media companies, well, you can only accept these specific emails or something like that. that
Yeah, I
that
mean, that's probably better than the social media sites getting regardless. I don't think that's
yeah,
still a perfect solution
I
though.
agree, it's still not a perfect solution, but um, I do think that that might be a little bit better. I think that's still something that could be a potential solution, but I don't know. I think regardless, there needs to be a method of age verification on these platforms, and I think below a certain age, you should not at all be able to get on these platforms.
I agree. I just don't know how there's a super good way to regulate it. I think more so it's just gotta come down. Like I think a lot of the problem with it is I was thinking about this when I was watching it. Is it's
Hmm.
just the generational lack of knowledge. Like a lot of these people, these parents who have teens that are on social media doing this, they're like even like given like their mid 30s, let's say,
Yeah.
like their kids like 15, they're like 35. They didn't grow up in a world with social media.
Right.
The time, if they, if they're like 35 and they're born in the 90s, they didn't get social media until well into their teens to begin with. So it's not like that you have like now where you have like 8-year-olds running around with iPhones that have access to the whole internet at their fingertips.
Yeah.
I think it's just more so like parents are the parents aren't aware of the dangers until it's too late because they didn't experience it themselves as a kid. So it's like they're just like, yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like when they go on it, it's like, oh, it's fine for me. It should be fine for my kid. And they
Right.
realize it's too late. But I think it's different now. Like the kids growing up now realize the dangers of like us and like younger than us know the dangers of social media as a child. I think they will do a better job as parents protecting their children from it than the parents now are protecting the children now.
Right.
I think just because as since we grew up and have experienced it, we have more knowledge on how to handle children, our child, our future children, whenever we have children on social media.
I agree. I mean, there are still issues like, especially right now, with AI image generation of like people, right?
Yeah.
And we've
Yep.
talked a little bit about this, but the creation of inappropriate images and stuff like that. I know, I think one of the people that they mentioned in the hearing, like there were, I don't know if they specified that it was AI or if it was a real image, but they said that there was a one individual that I think she ended up harming herself. I don't, and it was because like online she found out that there were like compromising images of herself. They didn't specify if that was like real or AI or anything like that. It was probably real, but like even nowadays, you now have to,
You can make a use AI to do that.
yeah, yeah, you can use an AI to make a completely fake email, and that can exacerbate things like bullying and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
it's really bad now. Like I don't know how a parent can necessarily like protect against that in the current state of the world. And I think the biggest thing is, I mean, again, this whole conversation of how do you prevent this inappropriate uh, creation of posts or content that are going to affect negatively impact these kids. But in regards to like specific stuff, right? They did start off by talking about, I think, something like family controls, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I feel like all of this just kind of goes back to you need to verify who you are at some point downstream, right? Because if you're a kid, um, you could hide your account from your parents. You could, but then again, at the same time, like, what if you have a terrible family situation and you need to
Yeah.
hide that account? It's really hard to like just say, oh yes, every child should be under their parents' account or something in some way, right? So I don't think that's necessarily the correct answer either. So, but in regards to family controls, they were talking about like the statistics of how many people are using family controls for like children or something like that, and then on top of that, how many people are like using it to actually like modify what's being seen by their kids and stuff like that. And it's a
Mm.
low percentage, I think, across each of the platforms.
But I guarantee
um
you, most parents don't even know that those controls even exist
yeah.
because they're like so buried deep within like a social media's like settings. It's like it's so much of a hassle to even find out that it even exists. Like I'm
Hmm.
curious now if I go to Twitter if I can even like see how long I have to click into like the settings to even find something like that. Let's see if I go to settings and privacy, um, maybe privacy and safety. Um, um, no, I don't see any accessibility. Maybe.
Yeah, I think you might just have to research how
Yeah,
they
like
even like do it. Like you might just have to
yeah,
look
like,
up on
exactly. Like,
Google like how do I
like
do
it was
this.
be something simple like me just looking at these settings here and finding it, but
Yeah, I mean, I
obviously
feel
me
like
sitting
most
here,
people
if
when
I can't
they're
say within like the first 30 seconds,
yeah.
it's a problem.
Yeah. I will
So
say I feel like most people when they look at or try to figure out how to do their settings, they just look up a WikiHow or something. Like most
yeah,
people. I mean, it might be different for like you or me because we're like a bit more technically inclined, and if we're
yeah,
used to the
I do agree
platform.
with that, but some like parental set control should just be something that's easily findable without having to do that.
Yeah, I mean, they said or Zucks said that they do like targeted ads. I think for like people that are like childbearing age, I guess. I don't know. He wasn't really super clear on that, but he said, "Oh, if they're the age that we expect someone to be a parent, then we'll like send them like ads, targeted ads to talk about that stuff." And that's something that they apparently do. And I'm like, "So, what if they have had kids young or what if they had kids super late?" Like I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
that's necessarily the correct I mean, it's a start, I guess. But yeah, it's really hard to think
it's
about
a tough
this.
situation.
Yeah, because like you also can't just say, "Oh yeah, children should have no privacy at all. Their parents should have full control over their social media." You can't really say that because like parents have never really had full control over their children's lives. Even like 100 years ago, your kids could walk around for like the whole day. 100 years ago
Yeah,
by themselves, and they could live their own lives, and then they just come home for dinner or whatever. Like that's still, like that's how it was. So,
mm.
uh, and yeah, I'm probably making it a little general there, but you got what I mean. Like
No, no, I get the point.
there was always a parent child dynamic where you have parents that are too relaxed, parents that are within a range of like, oh, we let our kids live their lives, and then they also have structure, and then there are parents that are too strict. So the big thing right now is like, well, if the end result is your child ends up doing something to themselves or getting harmed in some way, well, what exactly could you do differently? It's so I understand, like, especially the people that were there, the parents, the amount of probably emotion and vested interest that they probably have. I wonder where that line is of like, oh, these are concerned parents. Okay, how do you differentiate those parents who have like already suffered the loss, and you totally understand where they're coming from, and they're right in their grief, but at the same time, where do you balance the concerned parent versus the overbearing or controlled parent, right? It's two sides of parenthood, and you need to be there's no way to really make that distinction, right?
Yeah.
So that's something that I struggle
Yeah,
with to think
yeah,
about here.
it's just there's so much, uh, so many variables that factor into what we should do in this situation that really is no clear answer. Like, you could go with the ID verification, but like you said, too much privacy. What if a child needs to make an account without the approval of a parent? They live in an abusive household or whatever, or
Right.
at least a strict household. There's just too much weighing in a balance to be able to regulated. I feel like so. Then that's I guess that's why they have these hearings though, because I feel ultimately it falls on the social media companies to just
Yeah.
regulate the platforms better than they do. But they will choose not to because it's too lucrative for them to limit their audience to 18 and up. Why limit it to 18 and up when we can do 13 and up? And get all that extra clientele and get all that extra data and all that extra money.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're a business like everybody else. They're here to make a profit. They don't really care for. They're like, oh, we got 10,000 kids to sign up, and 2 of them harmed themselves because of
Right.
our social platform. That's not really our problem.
Right.
We're still making money on the other 9,998 of them. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I
that's just
mean,
all it comes down to is that it makes some money.
while you were saying that, I was also thinking of like the the anonymity. Yeah, anonymity. That's the word. I
Yeah.
was about to say anonymity or whatever. I was like, that's not right. Anonymity. um, but on Reddit, right, everything's basically anonymous. I mean, you could have pages, you have your friends and stuff like that, but like you're not. I mean, you don't really post pictures of yourself on Reddit. It's more stories and
No,
stuff
I
like
mean
that.
any social media site can be as anonymous as you want to.
Yeah.
You don't have to post pictures of yourself on
Right.
anything.
Right. But Reddit specifically, like people will post questions, post stories, ask for advice and things like that, and give advice and do all of these things. And people create like throwaway accounts where they're like, I really don't want people to know that this is associated with me, but I just
Yeah.
need to ask this question and stuff like that. So I'm like, that's still important, right? People need to have an avenue to ask those questions and not have it necessarily be like, oh, this is always going to be tied to me forever and anyone can find
Yep.
out that I asked this question and figure out what I said and stuff like that. So it's difficult for me to say, yes, Reddit needs to be fully verified and you need to know like who this person is and stuff like that. It's like, okay, there are very clear examples of where you don't want that to happen. And
Yeah.
so that's something that I struggle with there. And similar things for social media, like even just messaging services, people don't necessarily want those around them to know that they have access to these other messaging services because they might not be in a great situation, right? And so it's
Yeah.
hard for me to say, oh, anyone should be able to regulate what kids are viewing, and because I totally agree that these inappropriate things or these things that can affect people's mental health terribly, that should be away from the platform. But then at the same time, how do you like at that point I'm like, well, you should just not allow that content at all then, right? Like you don't allow NSFW content on a platform where you think children are going to be at all. Like that's the alternative, right? You can't regulate based off of age verification. Well, then regulate it completely. But then at the same
Yeah.
time, it's like, well, people are just gonna find another place to go and do that.
Yeah. Look what happened to Tumblr.
Yeah,
They got rid of NSFW content, and do you know anybody who uses Tumblr anymore?
yeah.
Nope. Like their traffic dropped literally unironically like 90% or something.
Mhm.
And then everybody just moved to Twitter or Reddit or whatever
Yeah.
for their NSFW content.
I mean, that's the only thing I've ever heard about Tumblr. That's the only thing
Yeah,
I ever hear. So like, yeah,
unless
it's
you're like a cringy middle school like me, but
yeah,
yeah, most people just use it for mostly just use it for NSFW stuff.
yeah.
Um, um
So I mean, to me, I'm like, I totally understand where people are coming from with wanting this. Well, then the two options, as far as I could tell, is either completely censoring the content that is deemed inappropriate, or force age verification. Those are
yeah,
the
both
those
of
are the
those
two
lose
extremes.
those situations. I feel like
Yeah.
I don't think there's a real win on either of those for various reasons.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, you could use biometric data technically to log in or create accounts for the first time through like your phones, right? That's a possibility.
Yeah,
But then you need to then have that connect to like the national database in order to be able to
yeah,
verify the age of the person that's creating the account. So regardless, you end up at a place where you need to verify that information somehow. And the question is, well, is the government then going to store that data? Are they going to track you? Which,
exactly.
yes, they are. They are
Yeah, of course they
definitely
are.
going to do that. And then what are they going to do with that information? So are they going to use it in background checks? Or are they going to use that to hold you accountable in some way? Or are they going to use that, like for example, like if you're a child and you post something stupid on the internet, but your account has now been tied to your social security number, your ID, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Well,
that
now,
seems like a massive amount of overreach
yeah,
on the government's part.
exactly. So I don't know if that's really going to be a helpful methodology. The only thing I could say is, well, if you don't trust your kids on social media, don't give them a phone. or don't allow them to download social media.
Yeah,
Don't give
I
them
was
a
thinking about that
laptop.
before, but kids are just gonna find a way to do it behind their parents' backs, and that's
Yeah.
probably doing it without the parents' knowledge is probably gonna be about 10 times worse than the parent at least knowing about it. I feel like
Yeah.
if a child accesses like that kind of material behind a parent's back, it's gonna
Right.
wind up worse in the long run. I think because then you lose that sense of trust between the child and the parent. Like you can't tell. You feel like oh I can't tell my dad anything. He's gonna find out I have an Instagram account. I
Hmm.
can't tell my dad anything. So I'm just gonna have to deal with this on my own or whatever. And then that's the whole situation. You don't want your relationship with your child to be in. So
Yeah.
it's a tough situation with that too.
I mean, I will say like it depends on the child, it depends on the parent, because that's what makes this so difficult. Because for me personally, like I was not allowed to even create an email account. I made one. Well, so this is what happened. A side anecdote, I guess. I found out my sister had a Facebook account. We were not allowed to have social media, and this was like middle school, and I think it
Yep.
was middle school. And so I found out about this, and then I made one too because I was like, oh well, I want to do it. And so we both made
Yep.
accounts, and but we weren't allowed to have that yet, and neither one of us really did. We didn't do anything that was like not appropriate. We weren't like avid posters, really. Like so
You
it
just use it
was
to play the games.
yeah, or yeah, play the games or just like
Video
see
games
what
are so
people are
lit back in
posting.
middle school.
You know,
That's all I used to be for in middle school too. I just played the games. Like
yeah.
I remember they had. You remember? Did you play the Pawn Stars one?
Honestly, I don't really remember. It was a
I
long
remember
time
playing
ago.
a lot. And
Yeah.
there was like some like Pokemon rip-off game on there too that
Uh
I remember
huh.
playing a lot. But anyway,
Yeah, I just remember it
I
always
just
being
shut
like
the
super
track.
buggy and stuff sometimes
Yeah,
on like the website and things like that. But I will say like one day my parents found out, we had a conversation about it, stuff like that. So like I understand that you hide things from your parents. Sometimes they'll find out, opens a conversation. Some parents will react a lot more poorly than my parents did.
yeah,
So like it really just kind of depends, and it really sucks that that's the answer. But I think that first off, if your child's under the age of like 13, regardless, they shouldn't have a phone. They
no.
shouldn't have an iPad. They should not have any of these
I
platforms.
didn't even have a smartphone until high school.
No, no, I think it's
In
ridiculous.
middle school, I had the old school phone where it was you flip it, you
Yeah.
slide for the
Oh
keyboard when
yeah,
you turn it
yeah,
sideways.
yeah. The
That's
sidekick.
what I had in middle school. And then in high school, it wasn't until high school when I got my first
Hmm.
iPhone.
Yeah,
I didn't even have a phone until middle school, and then it wasn't even a smartphone yet.
yeah. It was
So now
either.
I see like kids who like in elementary school walking around with like an iPhone 15.
Mhm.
I'm like, you really gonna trust a 10-year-old with like a $1,500 phone? I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
I
I
don't
don't know
know.
why you do
I
that.
think parents
Well,
are
my
being
parents do
really
that.
stupid with that. That's so
They get
ridiculous.
they're getting like a $200 flip phone.
Yeah,
That's how they're getting
exactly.
out of
I'm
date.
gonna go on eBay. I'm gonna buy a Nokia and then
Yeah,
give one to my kids every time they enter
yeah,
like middle school or something,
yeah,
because
yeah,
they
exactly.
don't need anything else. Like it's
No,
really unnecessary. If my kids want to learn about content creation, if they're actually interested in that type of stuff, or they want to explore and understand what that stuff is, sure, I can like show them myself, but I don't necessarily think that they should have a social media account as a child. It's not going to be a good thing for them.
not until 13 at least.
Yeah, like they should be probably in high school, to be honest. Before,
Yeah.
like I
How
wouldn't.
old are you when you go into high school? Is it not around? It's around. No, was it like
Maybe it's 14,
15?
14.
14, 15? Yeah.
Yeah. So like even
13
if
might
it's
be
like late
age
middle
school.
school, early high school, like you want to start touching upon that stuff, okay, fine. But like to have stuff, I think the biggest problem here is like parents also give all of these tools to children when they're like 5, and it's like
Yeah, well, that's the problem.
you're not doing them a good
Like
service.
nothing drives me more insane when you go out in public and you see the parent, like they're at the restaurant, they just put the iPad in front of the
Yeah.
kid and then just leave them alone for 2 hours
Yeah.
as they eat their food at the restaurant. Like it drives me crazy.
Yeah. I
Like
think that like
that's not good for anybody.
yeah. I think that parents who like do that, eh, they can't just say, "Oh, you don't know how difficult it is to be a parent." Well, guess what? Your parents didn't have that.
Yeah,
Your
exactly.
parents didn't have that, and they had to actually deal with you instead of just throwing a device at you so that you could be lazy and not do
And
anything.
it's like the same thing too when you always see like these like news reports that go viral. It's like my kid is playing Fortnite 9 hours a day.
Right.
Epic Games really should do something about making their software so addictive. And I'm like, hello, you're a parent.
Yeah.
Just turn the Xbox
Turn the
or put a
Xbox
screen
off.
time.
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
the kids want power?
Dude,
Why aren't
parental controls exist, and also like growing up, I was not allowed to watch TV during the week. I
yeah
wasn't allowed to. The only way I began to get around that was once I was in middle school and my uncle gave me like an iPod Touch for my birthday, or no, for Christmas. And that's
yeah
when I started using the internet, watching TV like all the time. Like that's what happened. And like that's not like a knock for having gotten that. Like it was great. I got to learn a bunch of stuff. It was a cool device, all of that. But I was in middle school already. I wasn't a child with unlimited access to the internet. It's not safe, and it's not the
no
job of a social media company to protect against that. But again, that's the range
yeah
underneath where we're
it's
talking
like
about.
it is there is an issue at hand. But at some point, there's at least to some degree, especially with like under 13, the responsibility has to fall on the
Yeah,
parents for just being bad parents.
yeah,
Like you can't just blame it like, oh, like I was saying, like you can't just be like, oh, my child plays Fortnite 8 hours a day. It's Epic Games' fault for making it so addictive. I can't my son doesn't do homework or anything. Just be like, I'll turn off the Xbox or unplug the Xbox and be like, I'll only give you your Xbox once you finish your homework.
yeah.
Like you can be a parent. Like I don't know what happened in this day and age. I feel like a lot of people just aren't parents anymore.
Yeah,
They let the
your
kids control
children need a box. That's all they need. You hand them a
yeah.
box at 5 years old, and they're going to be the happiest
They're gonna
camper
go
in the world.
crazy over that box. I'll play with that box for
Like
hours.
you're just destroying your children's ability to think, and then by the time they're 13, 14, 15, like all they know is social media, and that's not helpful for
Yeah.
them at all you've done is
Um.
do them a disservice. And this isn't to be like, oh, the parents at the hearing did something wrong. I'm not blaming
No,
them
100%. I
necessarily.
mean,
Like
yeah, no, no.
they are concerned parents, and they've suffered and had to deal with the consequences of this. But at the same time, when your children are too young to be on these platforms, it is your job to try and keep them off the platforms. Um, but on the side of like uh, once they're in middle school, high school, as you have to be, again, as a parent, you have to be able to notice when your child is going through
Going through
bullying,
something.
especially,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's hard to notice. It's hard to notice, but you're the parent. You also have to look and see the stuff. And this is not just to blame the parent, but I'm saying like the parent also has a duty of care here. They also
Yep.
have to do their job and find ways to monitor what their kids are doing. So your kids should be comfortable being friends with you on these platforms. If your kids are not comfortable with you being friends with you on Facebook or Instagram or being able to follow their accounts, and they're not okay with that, there's a problem going on there. They should be comfortable enough to do that with you, and that's a relationship issue there as well. Yeah, they might say, "Oh, it's kind of cringe," or like whatever. They might complain a little bit about it, but at the end of the day, like you need to know what's going on in
For
your
your
kids'
safety at
lives.
the end of the day.
Yeah, and especially when it comes to things like bullying and stuff like that. And honestly, like I'm not necessarily opposed to parents having access to a child's account directly, as long as they're using it for the right purposes. So again, this comes to like family culture and dynamics as well. Your kids should be comfortable with that type of stuff with you, and just so that every once in a while, if you want to check and make sure there's nothing wrong going on, that your kids are open to it. They're not going to blow up at you. They're not going to feel like you're about to like try and control them and stuff like that. I think that's
Yeah.
very vital,
Yeah,
and
'cause
that's
if they're hiding something on, if they don't want to show you it, they're hiding something that they don't want you to see, which is not something you want as a parent in like in that situation. I feel like
yeah,
you want your child to be able to be open to you.
exactly. So,
Yeah.
I mean, but I guess shifting back to the social media like companies specifically, that was a good conversation about like maybe what parents could probably do differently. But on the social media front, they did bring up something that I vehemently agree with, which was, I don't know which senator it was, but I think it was specifically talking about TikTok, maybe, either TikTok or Meta, one of the two, where they were saying that you basically just push people's buttons constantly so that they keep coming back for like almost like the drama fill, or like
Yeah.
the
I remember that one.
yeah.
I agree with that too. I believe.
Yeah, I don't remember exactly who the person was talking to, but I think it kind of does fall into most of the categories for the social media platforms where we're in an age where the algorithms are designed to keep us coming back, keep us
Yeah,
engaged,
and
and all
show
of
you
that.
you want to go down whatever rabbit hole you keep
Yeah,
going down.
yeah, and
Like,
so
I don't know if it's the same conversation you're talking about, but one of the senators was like, "You drive into this rabbit hole, but you never show them the opposite side of the
yeah,
conversation."
yeah,
And I was like, I totally agree with that. That's like one of the such a massive problem we have is
yeah.
that people just keep getting driven down whatever rabbit hole they want to believe in,
Hmm.
and then it's to the point where they'll just believe it because it's on social media or whatever,
Right. It's all just
and they
the
never
side
see
that
any
you
type
are
of
most
counter
exposed to.
argument ever.
Yeah. Because it's either like, oh, it's either framed in this way, oh, our side is correct, we're moral, we're just, and then we're looking at the other side and it's like, oh, they're terrible, they're demons, they're like they hate you or whatever, or they're stupid, stuff like that. And so that's kind of like the way to get people more divided. And the whole purpose
Yeah,
behind it is not to learn anything, it's to only accept your opinion.
keep showing people what they want to see, so to say on your platform.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. And so I totally agree with that point. I'm like, if you're going to create these platforms for dialogue, allow there to be actual dialogue, right?
Yeah,
If someone has a differing opinion from you, do not allow that conversation to be censored. Encourage those types of conversations because those are the most vital things on your platform at all. They're a
yep.
thousand times more useful than 100 people being like, "Oh yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree with you." Like that's not useful at all. You need to be able
No,
to hear the opposing side, hear someone deconstruct your arguments, hear someone who completely vehemently disagrees with you, and see why, right? And
yep.
make your own decision. Maybe you won't change your mind, but at least you'll be more informed. And that's the point. It's not about
Yeah, that's the most
changing your
important
mind.
part is being informed.
Yeah. Um, and just gaining exposure to different outlooks on life, and that's just not very possible when you are on social media now. It's either you're hit with one side of the algorithm or the other side of the algorithm, and it's really
Yep.
ridiculous, and it's not helpful to a society. I think that this probably relates back to like the polarization in politics. It relates back to the extremeness of reactions in public to people hearing no to their opinions, people like having blow-ups and meltdowns and stuff like that. Like all of this has to do with the fact that you are unable to be confronted with the kinks in your own armor, the kinks in your ideas that you have, the issues that you need to be more knowledgeable about, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And if you are unwilling to hear opinions that are not your own without mocking or laughing at them or trying to destroy someone's reputation just because they disagree with you, then you have failed at basic conversational skills.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with that.
yeah, so,
It's just one of the problems with social media is there's just how the algorithm, feeds everybody, just bad information. Well, not necessarily bad information, but like misleading information without doing anything to really correct it.
right. Or even it's just opinionated.
Yeah,
It's
that's
tip,
probably a better word.
yeah.
Opinionated.
'Cause it's not necessarily wrong, but there are always like two sides of an argument, two sides of an issue, whatever.
And the truth is always
Um,
somewhere in the middle. I've come to learn. I feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
truth is always somewhere in the middle from the two extremes.
Exactly. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. We can say, oh, there are some examples where, oh, this party's clearly wrong. Okay, but we should still hear what the other side is, just in case, and just in order to set a precedent, in order to open dialogue, right? Everyone can maybe disagree with that opinion, but as long as you heard it, and then you're able to say, okay, I heard it, but that's bullshit or whatever, and I don't agree with
Yeah.
it, or they're pretty
You
much
don't have to
just
agree with it. It's just the point that you hear it though.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, just saying, oh, this is our news station, that our other news station's terrible, or that one YouTuber sucks because they have opinions on this and whatever. Like that's not useful. And so I think that's definitely a big issue with social media. I think part of it is, I mean, something else that they bring up, your purpose, and I think they specifically asked Mark Zuckerberg this. They said, do you have a vested interest in having kids stay on your platform longer? Right?
Yeah, they did that. I
And
remember that.
he didn't really answer. I mean, he said if they gain more value from the platform, yes. And I don't think that's 100% accurate, but it's like, yes, that
No, it made
ultimately,
sense. Yes, a lot more
yeah,
people on the platform for longer.
yes.
They
Because
literally
the,
designed social media to be addicting
yeah, yeah,
because they want you to be on it.
And so that's their full incentive, right? And so to me, I'm like, well, how do you get people to stay somewhere longer? Upset them,
Yeah.
give them drama, give them
Yeah.
controversy,
Yep.
give them something to be upset about and pissed off about and write about, right? That's how you keep them on your platform.
Yep.
Okay, that is not helpful for anyone's mental health at all. And that is completely counter, like, that in and of itself justifies this whole hearing process to me, regardless of like even some of the more extreme cases that they're talking about in terms of uh, safety for children and stuff like that. Like even just that in terms of like a mental health perspective, like that's like the starting point to me. Where I'm like, allow people to have open discourse, allow people to not just be chasing drama. Like there needs to be something counteracting the current algorithms in place. Yes, show people things based off of their interests. Show people things that are productive for them though, right?
Yeah.
Push content that's like, oh, explore these parts of the world, or like go on these hikes, or like see interact with other people and things like that, where in a more positive way, and not just, oh, we need you to yell at this person because they did something stupid, or laugh at them, or treat each other poorly. I just,
You know, I agree.
there needs to be an algorithmic shift and a cultural shift at
Yeah, social media is really is one of the main factors in what's dividing us right now, I would say,
yeah,
because of how the algorithms work. Like you said, if it was something more just about like recommending you, they take recommending things that you would enjoy to like way too of an extreme. Like I said, if it's just something like, oh, you like hiking, here's some like trails nearby that you would enjoy or something. But it's then like,
right,
oh, you have this opinion, we're gonna show you everybody who gives you with this opinion, and no alternate takes at all.
right,
And I'm just like, that's not doing anybody a service.
yeah. And I will say, I mean, something else that was kind of horrifying, the trafficking stuff that they said was happening
Mhm.
on Facebook, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that it didn't violate terms of service.
Hmm.
That is wild to me. That is
Yeah.
absolutely wild. I don't know. See, I don't know exactly. They didn't specify if this was like messages or what this was. I assume it was posts or something. I don't know, because they said
I assume
they,
so, but
yeah, they said they had it reported or something, and then they had people review it and stuff. And so I'm like,
yeah.
okay, that stuff relating to like human trafficking and things like that should be against your terms of service.
Yeah,
As
you would think.
yeah, it should. There should be no justification for that to like slip through the cracks, right? Um, and so I totally understand that. Like that's ridiculous. Stuff like that should not exist on these platforms at all. And so I
Yeah.
think like a governing
And like
body,
again, it's like I'm sure that they obviously don't intend for that to be on the platform,
yeah,
but it's just these platforms are so massive. You're not gonna be. You have something stuff's gonna slip through the cracks. There's
yeah,
gonna be something slips through the cracks. It's just not possible to. It's not possible to deal with everything immediately, unless you could completely automate it, which that has its own slew of problems.
yeah,
But then if you have a human team, stuff's just gonna take time, and they might miss stuff or make a mistake with stuff.
hmm,
That's just how humans are. So again, it's another situation where I feel like it's not a complete there's not a complete catch-all solution because both have pros and cons.
yeah. I will say I want a statistic. They didn't talk about this, but a statistic of young children that have been impacted by these things would have been through social media and having ties to social media. That would have been extremely useful to watch this and like get a better gauge of what the impact is
Yeah,
here.
well, we could have. I think the clip we watched was only like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
So I mean, the whole thing was like 4 hours. So that might have been brought up in the other half or whatever.
yeah, that's
But
possible. I do know in the clip that I sent, it wasn't there, but it's the moment where they said you have blood on your hands and stuff like that,
yeah,
and that was chilling. I will say when I watched like I think it was a news like segmented version of that. It was like a couple minutes long. Um,
yeah,
it very much felt like the senator saying that was like basically saying I dare you to not apologize, as opposed to being sincere about, oh, you should apologize for this, right? It very much
uh,
felt like a huge heavy-handed like you have to do this right now, as opposed to like allowing him to
Hey,
genuinely do
talking
it.
about Mark Zuckerberg to like turn around to
Yeah.
apologize to their crowd.
Yeah, it was like we're going to pause and you're going to do this. And I'm like, okay, but is he doing it just because you told him to do it? Is he doing it because he's being genuine here? I don't really
He's not being
know.
genuine.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Like
don't.
how do you
If these social media companies are being genuine with these apologies, wouldn't it be on the 10th year in a row of having
Yeah.
these hearings?
Exactly. Like it's been like 4 or 5 years of nothing
Wouldn't
happening.
have these hearings going on for like 10 plus years
Yeah.
if they were actually serious about apologizing?
Yeah. I will say
Thing
though,
is that
yeah, this makes me think that like Section 230 should just be revoked. I think so at this point. A
mm,
social media company should be fully liable for everything that's on their platform. I think so. I honestly like
the big
you have
discussion
that.
they're
Yeah.
having is Section 230.
Yeah. I mean, look, I understand big it's a big company, you got a lot of users and stuff like that, but if we put it on you
They have,
guys, you're going to fix it.
mm,
We put it on you guys and you're actually going to fix it. You're going to have a much bigger incentive
and
than you currently
the
do.
second it starts hitting their wallet, they'll actually fix it.
Exactly. So I'm
The
like,
government can put on like at once a year being like,
yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
It's clearly not working. So
So in my mind,
also,
I'm like, unless you are breaking their bank, they're not going to do anything to change it, right?
yeah,
We can say yes, families have a duty to protect their children first and foremost, especially when your kids are really young. You have to teach them how to be safe, how to be critically thinking about the things that they're doing and stuff like that. That is vital, and that is a parent's job to do that. Do not just throw devices at your children to have them basically just figure it out themselves. And then at the same time, don't just trust social media companies to
yeah.
blindly like protect your kids either. That's also stupid. And then on the other hand of that, what should the social media companies do? It should break their bank. It should 100% break their bank. I don't think the money should necessarily go back to the government. I think the money should go to other
To the affected
organizations. Yeah, to affected families, to other organizations that help uh help prevent these types of things, stuff like that. That's where that money should go, and it should be pulled out. There should be no way to really appeal those types of things once it's been proven. Like there should be a hard line here that companies are now uh, responsible for what is on their platform. It has to be.
Yep.
And I think it's kind of ridiculous that it's not like that. I didn't realize it wasn't like that. And like I understand the argument against it. It's like, oh, well, anyone can post anything that they want, whatever. How do we control that? I figure it out, man. Like figure it out. There's more important stuff here. Um, and so maybe it means doubling, tripling your staff that's reviewing these things, right? Maybe it also includes like adopting some AI tools to automatically flag things that seem like they could be inappropriate, stuff like that. Maybe these are the things that need to happen, but you need the incentive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um,
right now they really don't have the incentive to do much.
yeah,
It's not affecting their bottom line, so why care?
yeah. Um, at least for the part that we talked about, they didn't really talk too much to like Discord, I think. But
No,
I think it may have been
it was
Discord where,
mostly on the Zuck.
yeah,
I feel like
yeah,
that I haven't had so it was mostly on the Zuck.
yeah. I do know that there was a section that there was the dude that was just talking to the CEO of TikTok. Yeah.
TikTok, my
Yeah.
favorite social
Well,
media.
well, you know it's funny in the actual questioning, I think it was what's his name? He was one of the Republican presidential candidates at one point, I think. I forget what his name is. Um
He's in the at the hearing.
yeah, it was in it was in one of the later halves, I think. Cuz I saw a clip of that. I didn't watch it in this hour and a half.
Oh, okay, I didn't see
But
that
he
clip.
called it TikTok and then he said, "Oh, TikTok." Um but regardless, there was some questioning where it was like, you do realize he's Singaporean, not
Yeah,
Chinese, right? And
yeah,
there's definitely elements of that where I'm like, okay, guys, like, please stay on task here. I don't
yeah.
know.
Just because just because TikTok is a Chinese company, I don't think that was should have been that was not what the
Yeah,
focus of the hearing was on. It's just they just wanted to poke a finger at China because China.
Yeah, or like
You know,
ByteDance, I
like
guess.
I said
Yeah.
at the beginning of this, it's all just political theater.
Yeah. Yeah, stuff like that. I'm like, you're literally just speaking to your user base right now. I don't know why you're talking like this right now. You just literally want to say China like 15 times so that your fans will say, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's that," you know? Like it's really that to me I was like, you guys are being lazy and you're not actually doing your job. You're actually being stupid. And also like they couldn't comprehend that he wasn't part of the Chinese Communist Party as a
Yeah.
Singaporean, and I'm like, dude, what is this? Like, it sounds stupid. You sound stupid. And
Yeah,
so it's
welcome to
things
the
like
American
that.
government.
Yeah, I feel like it's things like that that delegitimize these types of conversations because people are just going to clown on you for
Yeah.
doing stuff like this. And it's like, you need to understand the optics of the questions that you're asking. You sound racist. You sound like an idiot. Like, I don't see how you're going to get people on your side with clips like that going out and being sent out into the world. People are going to be like, you guys are stupid. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think the focus needed to be on what's happening with these kids and what are the things that need to change. I also think that they need to actually start figuring out what legislation they want at this point, because if it's been years of basically nothing happening, like what is the point of these hearings? You know.
Hmm.
Um, Also, they did mention the users worth $270 thing.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah, that was wild to me, but also I don't know if they were necessarily representing that in the best way, the way that they were talking about it, because I assume what they're talking about is over the course of someone's lifetime, right? This is the amount of money that we earn directly from them or something like that. I don't know if the 270 is entirely accurate, but like um on a company level, you like these are things that you would probably have to have conversations about. They weren't conflating that with the value of that person's life. They were saying that, oh, this is likely what the investment in having this one person on the platform will have a return on us, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, 'cause they are a company first and foremost,
yeah,
so
yeah,
thinking about profit is important.
exactly. So I don't necessarily. I would have to like read the emails that they're talking about here, the correspondence that they're talking about, because the
Yeah.
way that they're making it sound like is they're treating people like they're cattle, and they're ready to slaughter them. And having a statement like that or talking like that when we're also discussing things like self harm, we're talking about suicide, things like that impacting children, bullying, all of that. Um, it sends a very clear characterization, and I don't know if it's necessarily accurate because
Hmm.
every single person on every single platform, to every single company, has some sort of ROI associated with them in terms of
Yeah.
the company provides you with some type of service, some type of value, and at some point they get a return on that investment. So to me, I'm like, I don't necessarily like the way that they spoke about that because I don't know if they're being genuine in their analysis there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's obviously, they're gonna come into it with a biased argument.
yeah.
Um, because they're basically just trying to get these social media companies to say what they want to say,
Hmm.
what they want them to say. But obviously, the CEOs are not stupid. They're not just gonna walk in and say exactly what these politicians want them to say.
Hmm.
So that's why when they ask for a simple yes no question, like, well, not really. I don't necessarily agree with your question.
Yeah.
Because it's just the whole song and dance that comes with these types of things.
Yeah.
You're gonna present your argument, you know, the way that no matter what, the other person on your side is just gonna come out looking like the bad guy.
Yeah.
So
And with a matter
not
of
that
like
these,
public
these
record,
CEOs aren't the bad guys,
yeah.
obviously, but
Yeah. I mean, I will say also like a lot of these platforms, they weren't I mean, yes, at some point they want to have profit and stuff like that, but their purposes aren't their purpose is not to exploit children. It's not their purpose, right? Like
it
Discord was an alternative to Skype that was meant for
just
like
just
gamers to
better
be
to
able to
you.
convert, yeah, to be able to converse and interact with each other online, right? Same thing with Facebook was meant to be a way for children or I guess college students to interact with each other. That's where it started.
Yeah,
Instagram post pictures about stuff like all of the development in social media. It's not meant to hurt children. That's not its
they don't
express
go into it
purpose.
like I'm gonna design something that's meant to harm
Yeah,
children.
yeah, and
You
so
know,
I think
not
that's
like that, but
something that's important to note because when you are in, I don't want to say antagonizing, because on some level it's we're trying to hold them accountable for the actions of their company, but when you're standing there and trying to roast or just talking at someone for 5 minutes and you don't ask them a question and stuff like that, it's like, okay, you're just looking for the scapegoats of this problem. We need to
You're just looking
find
for like the
solutions.
ironically, they're just looking for like the viral clip to post on
Yeah,
social media.
yeah, yeah. It's I don't know. I even heard. I think it was Philip DeFranco. Was it he talking about like, oh,
He
these
talked
people are
about the show
getting.
like a day or two ago.
Yeah,
This hearing.
he. I think he talked about how, um, these senators are talking down about all this stuff, and then they're using clips to like gain more like views and stuff like that, and gain more attention and stuff. So I'm like, well, yeah, you're kind of right there. They're just kind of using the platform in the same way that they're to like polarize people, to gain
Yeah.
attention, all of that. So they utilize the same platforms that they're admonishing. So it's really hard to take them seriously sometimes with some of the methods that they're talking about here.
hmm
Um, but yeah, was there anything in particular that you wanted to discuss that we haven't mentioned yet?
No, that was. I feel like we hit all the good key points there. I
Yeah,
feel like I've said my piece.
yeah, I agree. I mean, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. I think that this was a very interesting conversation, being the first time that I've actually like watched one of these hearings before, and so it
hmm
was really cool to
I
learn
haven't
more.
watched one before. I mean, but I've known of them and seen like them
Yeah.
talk about like on the news and stuff. I never sat down and actually watched it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. So let us know your thoughts below. I mean, do you agree with us? Do you think it's a mix of parent responsibility and social media companies? Do you think that the parents should just push all the responsibility on the social media companies, or do you think that the parents should be the ones holding all of the authority? Like, where do you fall on that spectrum? Do you
mm,
think that? What do you think about like children that are under 13? What do you think about the range that they're talking about here, which is mostly teenagers? And how do you think like social media in general is like impacting pretty much everyone in the way that they're interacting with the world, whether it's a positive and negative? Let us know your thoughts, your opinions, experiences there. All right.
make sure to comment, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe. Feed the algorithm. We are on social media after all. Feed the algorithm, and we'll be back in a year to talk about the next hearing.
Exactly. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.